If I'm speaking, am I right? Is my volume okay for everyone at the back? Yeah? Okay, I've got a script I'm going to read from, so hopefully it'll keep me to context, but hopefully it won't be too dull. I got it. So, throughout this paper, I will consider the motivations for staging historical participatory exhibitions and how these are documented and archived. My research is concerned with seeing where the gaps are in what documentation we have before restaging and how the process of restaging an exhibition fills these gaps, making clear the authenticity of these restaged records. To explore these broader questions, I've drawn on Robert Morris's exhibition Body, Space, Motion, Things as a key case study, and will now interrogate the original and the restaging with reference to findings from Tate's public records. Robert Morris's exhibition Body, Space, Motion, Things originally opened at Tate Gallery, London in 1971 and was the first fully interactive exhibition to be hosted at Tate. The installation incorporated 3 different types of sculpture: sculpture that can be moved by the participant, sculpture which is set in action by the weight of the body, and fixed sculpture which dictates the movement of the participant. These elements provided the opportunity for the audience to climb, balance, crawl and roll on Morris's wooden sculptures, and to explore ideas of spatial awareness and play in the museum. As you can kind of see from these images, but obviously they're just a snapshot of what the full exhibition would have looked like. Body, Space, Motion, Things was memorably closed by Keeper of Exhibitions Michael Compton due to damage caused by, in his words, somewhat overzealous participation. The exhibition, as you can see from these images, I think, how that would have been possible at the time. The exhibition was open to the public for only 5 days and saw 2,500 visitors before its premature closure. Accounts of injuries filled over 3 pages, leaving staff members with great anxiety. It's quite humorous when you read through all the different accounts, you think, how would that have happened? The motivations behind the original exhibition seem to be surrounding introducing a fully interactive exhibition to Tate, which I will reference throughout this paper, but also I believe there is something in the profile of Morris in the UK at the time. I feel the associated qualities with him as this sort of powerful artist at the time, which I sort of got from the poster that they released through the exhibition more than anything. Makes obvious the draw of displaying Morris as a force in the art world at Tate during the time. I guess if we consider the exhibition itself and its daring nature, we can see how this might also relate. The dramatic closure of the original exhibition led to much interest from the media, as you can imagine. The nature of what was said gives real insight into the impact of the exhibition. I've just got 2 quotes. One quote from the Daily Telegraph, which said it was reminiscent of an army assault course. And a quote from the Times, which says it might appear first like a set of physical tests and challenges to be mastered. So hopefully that gives you a little idea about how it was perceived at the time. From May to June 2009, Body, Space, Motion, Things was restaged at Tate Modern as part of the UBS Openings the long weekend, which was extended due to the success of the exhibition. Tate curator Cathy Noble acknowledges the importance of the original exhibition and hints towards the motivations for recreating in the following quote. Recreating the exhibition, the installation, represents a landmark in Tate's history of exhibition making. Noble also states how restaging the exhibition gives us the opportunity to see the full extent of the structures through creating them in more robust contemporary materials. As you can kind of see from that, but you can also just understand through the difference in time. Of course, we have to remember Noble's positioning in this as a member of staff at Tate, thus we can only assume this as an institutional perspective rather than a personal one. I find the use of terminology quite telling. The use of the word recreating rather than restaging may suggest their motivations were potentially theoretically focused, giving authorship over to a curator, although it's only speculation. When restaging the exhibition, documentation from the original was heavily used to recreate the wooden ply structures and their installation in the space of Tate, which was bespoke designed by Morris in 1971. This documentation was also used to improve the sustainability of the exhibition through reviewing materials to make structures safer for the public. These materials allowed Morris's exhibition to reach what was said as its full potential in 2009. What interests me is whether the authenticity of the exhibition is affected due to this, or whether the intentions of the original exhibition were responsive to the circumstances occurring during the period it was open to the public. As without this, I believe the restaging would not have happened, and body space motion things would have played a different role in exhibition histories. Another type of documentation which has played a powerful role in the historicisation of this exhibition is photography of the original, which you can see on the slides on the screen. What I found quite interesting was how they tried to sort of replicate the way people were interacting with the sculptures at both times. It was something that came out a lot through looking at what was in the media and then what they sort of recreated. This type of replica making adds to the fetishisation of the original, with images of museum visitors breaking the institutional rules, something that's not so shocking to a contemporary audience. It is clear from this that motivations to reconstruct are derived both from the impact and role played by the original exhibition and the prominent changes, trends and happenings in the relevant fields of practice at the time of the restaging. Examples of the latter are the potential impact of this type of research on new educational models and the current trend of alternative histories. These broader ideas which motivate this type of exhibition are continuously growing, and recent practice has given us a vantage point to view the past, with research occurring in this field and advantages in technology making archival material more accessible to the public. Body Space Motion Things asks for a physical interaction from the public, asking them to test their boundaries. Due to this unique engagement with the structures, I would question whether the term restaging is appropriate, as you cannot restage an individual's experience, just the physical structures they were confronted with in the space. With this question in mind, I began archival research. And I've just included, this is sort of an image I found in the archive of how it was laid out at the time, which you can kind of picture how people would interact with the different elements there. Through examining archival records, I have found that public reception has mainly been documented by photography, with some written quotes to accompany this when certain images have been used in media publications. Although, as far as I could see, there were no physical records of visitor comments left during the original exhibition, in a written form or any other. Thus, this tells us that restaging is focused on the physicality and aesthetics of the exhibition. With this in mind, I approached the public records based on the knowledge that I was unlikely to find any answers to how people interacted through their own perspective. This doesn't show up very well, but I'll touch on it in what I say. On the slides, I've included photographs from Tate's public records of a letter from Michael Compton, head of exhibitions at Tate at the time of the original, to Robert Morris. When examining the material archived on the original exhibition, this letter was the most interesting item in my opinion. Compton does one of two things in his letter. As you can see, he lists the reasons for closure in terms of breaches to health and safety, of which there are many that fill sort of all these pages down in different lists. You probably can't read them, but they're really quite bizarre. The second and most important thing in terms of my research that he does is he reflects on the success of the exhibition and his interpretation of body space motion things reception by the media. As you can see from the section highlighted in yellow, which you probably can't see, but Compton felt that the media was keen to portray the shock factor of the exhibition, and he also states his case for the closure, taking into account his concerns for members of staff monitoring the exhibition. Through his own words, we begin to understand how this was not a rash decision. From this document, I could also see how the audience were engaging through means of their own, making up games based around the structures which were recorded as just this, and so it would be impossible to replicate. The most poignant section of this letter for me is the conclusion. Compton concludes by reflecting on the success of the exhibition in regard to the wider art world at the time and what key moments it has added to. For example, the development of the social role of museums as a field of practice. The fact that Compton included this reflection in his letter shows that he believed the exhibition would have an impact in future participatory practice in museums and will be revisited in one way or another in the future. As it happens, this has been the case. In exhibition notes, Morris refers to his belief that the product is less important than the process in this exhibition. If this is the case, then even the presumed downfall of the 1971 exhibition might have in fact been its triumph. In my interpretation, if the restaging was aiming to do anything more than historically replicate the circumstances and structures presented for the public to interact with, then it may have failed. As even though the images published of this restaging represent the interaction from the public being identical to the original, without any concrete documentation of how they engaged by individuals themselves, how would we replicate this engagement? Or perhaps the question is, why would we want or need to? As to replicate participation would only have aesthetical values, as the real purpose would lie in how a contemporary audience engage with these structures, and so not what the outcome would have been if the original exhibition withstood its full length without the materials failing, but how this exhibition would have been received if originally conceived and produced in 2009. When examining archival material and then considering this in the context of restaging an exhibition, artistic authorship continuously arose within my analogy. In the context of my research, I would ask the questions: how can we fully replicate exhibitions which involve public participation? Is there any way to document an individual's experience, and if so, could this be replicated by anyone but this individual at a certain point in time? If the answer is no, which I feel it might be, then how do we utilise this method of historicising and reproducing exhibitions in a way which contributes to this growing field of practice, but at the same time fulfills the functions, authenticity and motivations of the original exhibition? As what cast body space motion things into the forefront of exhibition histories was its supposed demise, then how could this be replicated in a way which is not for us to theorise or imagine a more successful or more appropriate outcome, but to focus on those elements which made history? When Cathy Noble refers to this recreation as representing a landmark in Tate's history of exhibition making, I believe we need to define what it was that placed this exhibition as a landmark in Tate's history, and acknowledge this within its reconstruction to give it real authenticity, rather than simply an aesthetic or material existence, as this was not the original intention. Whilst remembering Noble's positioning towards this reconstruction, we also look to archival materials still for more defining evidence of this point. I guess it all lies in how we define and measure the success of an exhibition, and what features give an exhibition a place amongst histories, and who decides this even. This raises the question to me of whether or not we are remembering exhibitions for the right reasons, and in turn, what are these reasons for remembering and forgetting? I feel this question is much larger than my research, but one that I'm hoping to try and add to answering. Thank you.